The Tokyo Disney Resort is known for its extraordinary ability to take the beloved and familiar and reimagine it in a way that is totally new, fresh, and utterly spectacular. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea at Tokyo DisneySea is no exception. Located within the park's iconic mysterious island, this intricate dark ride opened with the park back in September of 2001. And despite sharing a name with other Disney rides around the world, in true DisneySea fashion, this version is so much more than what came before it. The Disney parks have a long history of adapting this iconic Jules Verne novel that goes all the way back to the days of Walt Disney. The first attraction related to the novel would open just a month after Disneyland did, when the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea exhibit opened in Tomorrowland, giving guests the chance to walk through and admire props and sets from the 1954 film of the same name. 4 years later, in 1959, Disneyland embarked on an ambitious expansion of Tomorrowland, which included 3 new attractions: the Matterhorn bobsleds, the Disneyland monorail, and the submarine voyage, paving the way for the grandest 20,000 Leagues attraction ever to be built. This aptly named submarine voyage was commissioned in front of Walt Disney with his wife Lillian in attendance, along with President Richard Nixon and officers of the US Navy. Not yet themed to Jules Verne, the attraction used early animatronics and forced perspective to simulate a deep-sea environment. Guests would descend into large grey submarines via a staircase and observe their outside underwater environment through large glass windows. Despite the appearance, guests were only a foot underwater and were essentially just inside fancy boats on a track. The attraction made clever use of bubble jets in a hidden show building behind a rockwork facade to give the impression that they were much deeper underwater than they actually were. The experience proved to be extremely popular with guests, and with the forthcoming Florida project on the horizon, Walt Disney Imagineering got to work planning an even more elaborate iteration for what would become the Magic Kingdom. On October 14, 1971, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea submarine voyage opened at the Magic Kingdom. Despite being externally themed around the Jules Verne novel and the classic Disney film, the ride experience was very similar to its Californian counterpart. Guests would climb down a staircase into a submarine, where Captain Nemo from the classic story would showcase the underwater depths, divers, the North Pole, and the ruins of Atlantis. While this attraction was a guest favorite, it was expensive to maintain and had a relatively low hourly capacity, so an advertised temporary closure on September 5th, 1994 would become a permanent one, and the ride would never open again. The Oriental Land Company, the owners of Tokyo Disneyland, wanted a version of this attraction for their upcoming sea-based second theme park. But at Disney's warning, this new version wouldn't take you under the sea at all. And to save on the expensive upkeep of underwater ride systems, show scenes, and animatronics, this new version would be a suspended dark ride, similar to Peter Pan's Flight. However, guests still needed to be convinced that they were seabound. So via clever water tanks and bubble systems built into the ride's viewing windows, guests were convinced that they had dived below the ocean. An effect that we can't undersell just how effective it is. You are even further convinced by the load and unload station for the ride being above a bubbling pool of water. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea takes place in one of, if not the most immersive theme park land in the world, Mysterious Island. Set in the 1870s on an uncharted island somewhere in the South Pacific, a giant volcano has risen from the depths. This is the secret base of operations for Captain Nemo himself, a man wishing to explore both the depths of the sea and the earth. Captain Nemo has invited the world's scientific community to visit him and share in his discoveries at Mysterious Island, and you are among them. The land is home to 2 attractions: the groundbreaking Journey to the Center of the Earth, the ride that puts this park on the map for a lot of people, and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, A ride that would be a headliner at any other Disney park, but often feels forgotten about at DisneySea. Captain Nemo has personally invited you as explorers and adventurers to board one of his submarines to research and enjoy the majesty of the ocean. To begin this adventure, you start by weaving down a spiral ramp and past Nemo's own mini-sub, giving guests a glimpse of the upcoming ride vehicle. Across the way as you get closer to the water's edge, you can spot Nemo's much larger submarine, the Nautilus, bubbling away on the other side of the lagoon. Once down into the cavern of the island, you bypass Captain Nemo's private study and control panel, where you discover that the captain is working in another part of the facility. Throughout this section, there are plenty of notes, maps, and research materials for you to view and read whilst you wait in the queue. Here, you are also introduced to one of Captain Nemo's newest inventions, the Aquaphone, a wireless communication device that allows him to monitor activities throughout Mysterious Island and broadcast anything he discovers to his fleet of underwater research submarines. Further throughout the queue, you pass the dive hatch area, noting missing diving suits, before entering the submarine docking port. Here, hanging from the roof via a large hook, is the submersible you're about to travel 20,000 leagues under the sea in. That's 96,560 kilometers for us metric folk. Guests board the 6-person ride vehicles, and the conveyor belt moves them to the water's edge, ready to be dropped in and begin their dive. Upon release from the hook, you immediately make your way to the depths. Captain Nemo speaks over the aquaphone, welcoming you as his volunteer crew. As you hit the ocean floor, you can first observe the beauty of an ocean reef surrounding Mysterious Island. But Captain Nemo warns you to be on the lookout for highly intelligent beings that live underwater. Once you hear the bell, an interactive element of the ride begins, where a joystick in front of you controls a searchlight, allowing you to look around and light up the deep, dark depths. Guests are then reminded that the ocean is a vast and wondrous place, not controlled by man, as they traverse a graveyard of sunken and lost ships, some in the middle of celebrating a New Year's Eve party. No matter the power and riches these people may have had, these vessels were destined to become junk at the bottom of the sea, a playground for critters of the deep that can be spotted via your searchlight. But you have little time to reflect on these lost ships, as turning the corner you are greeted by a piercing eyeball, belonging to a sea creature of mammoth proportions. Nemo warns you to approach slowly and carefully, but the creature's eye lights up red as his full body and tentacles come into view. You are being attacked by a giant squid. The defense system is activated and the tentacles begin to be electrocuted, but the squid traps your submarine, barely escaping with one final shock. But now, there's another issue. The defense system has drained your sub of more power than it should have, and you start to descend further and further into the water. Down at these new depths, you start to see evidence of a long-lost civilization. Murals and crumbling structures suggest you are not the only people in this place. Before long, you start to notice eyeballs peering back at you, watching from afar. But power is still an issue, and although the backup generator has kicked in, it too is almost out of energy, and oxygen levels are getting dangerous low. As energy levels are set to their minimum, more and more aquatic creatures seem to be investigating your visitation. Unlike the creatures you saw in the sunken shipyard though, these new ones seem to be humanoid in shape and evolved for their aqueous home. Soon these creatures emerge from the ruins of the lost city of Atlantis and save you and your crew, pushing you up and out of the depths as they wave a final goodbye before you arrive at the unload area, safe and sound. The tricks used in this ride to make you really feel underwater show the ingenious of Imagineering, down to the Atlantean animatronics having this flow about them that truly makes them look like they are swimming, especially when you compare this to a ride like The Little Mermaid, which never quite achieves that effect realistically. Unlike the submarines featured at other Disney parks around the world, guests never actually go underwater within this attraction. Instead, they use the windows of the ride vehicle to simulate the effects in a surprisingly simple manner. The undersea effect is mostly achieved using 2 layers of glass with a layer of water in between them. This layer of water achieves 2 effects that really help sell the undersea nature of the ride. First, it helps simulate the distortion typically seen when underwater, and secondly, it cleverly contains an air pump that allows bubbles to rise through the glass at specified times to simulate diving and being underwater. The overhead rail system used for this ride is also surprisingly intricate and robust for what seems like a simple attraction at first glance. Suspending the ride vehicle above the ground allows for the submarines to realistically glide above the seafloor, but it does lead to some awkwardness if you ever need to evacuate, having to ascend a ladder to the catwalks above the attraction where you follow a cast member to the nearest emergency exit. People often forget about this ride when talking about Tokyo DisneySea, but we think it's a triumph, taking an older idea and bringing it up to modern standards with modern tricks and effects. So if you ever make it over to Tokyo Disney Resort, don't miss 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Also make sure once you've enjoyed your deep sea exploration, drop by the nearby Nautilus Galley to pick up the famed gyoza dog. For Review Time, I'm Luke. Thanks for watching.